and welcome everybody to Flight Past, the podcast stream that uses Microsoft Flight Simulator to have a look at some of the most important historical moments from the air. And a big thank you to all of our new followers. I hope I can not let you down, and I hope that the expectations you have for the stream are met. And we've hit 10 subscribers, so we're a very small channel. So if you do enjoy the content, then please like and subscribe. Feel free to chat, give us a question, point out anything I get wrong, because I'm bound to get things wrong, and help it out in any way you can. If you see something that you think I need to mention, then do say. You can join in the discussion more on Discord, and I've put a link in the chat. So where are we now? Well, at the moment we're doing D-Day, and if you've followed along this far, you know that we've done the 6th Airborne, British 6th Airborne Division Operation Tonga, which is on the eastern flank of the invasion beaches, which was down in this area here. And we've also done looked at the US equivalent of that operation, which was Operation Albany, and Operation Boston, which was the 82nd and the it's the 101st Airborne and the 82nd Airborne drop on the Kottatan Peninsula here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go and start looking at the actual beaches themselves, and we're going to work along in a chronological order as the landings occurred. And they occurred at slightly different times because the tide is coming in this way. And so the first beach landings were here at Utah, and then we'll go to Omaha and Gold and Juneau, and we'll finish at Sword, and we'll meet up back with the 6th Airborne at the end. For those of you who are new to the channel, the plan is that I will do these little series, put them into playlists, and this one is just on D-Day, so we're just looking at the first sort of 24 hours, but there will be a future playlist which will be done on the Normandy campaign. But I would, for people who just to let people know, expectation wise, I won't just be doing military stuff. There will be other subjects, anything that basically we can use this technology to tell a story, basically. So, but I do have plans to do things like the Napoleonic War, Waterloo, the Peninsular War. There'll be, I think, something on English Civil War, American Civil War, but also Falklands. I thought I would do stuff on football clubs, cricket clubs, rivers, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, let's start this one then. This is it's a Utah beach, and we're talking. And basically, this is the 4th Infantry Division's responsibility on D-Day. They came over in 1943 along with all the airborne, and we have seen all the training camps that the airborne used, and the 4th Infantry Division were trained, I think, at Fort Benning. And if you want to go back and look at some of the ones when we flew over that area, and please go back and have a look at some of the 82nd and 101st training areas. But we get to this decision by the Supreme Allied Expeditionary Force. So we're talking Eisenhower and Montgomery, when they got control, became commanders of this force, they had an initial plan that was for 3 divisions to land, and that was along this section of coast here. But they wanted to expand it, and they expanded it by adding Utah Beach and Omaha Beach, and that meant that there was, and this is all because they needed to capture this port here, which is Cherbourg, and it's a deep water port. So with the addition of Utah Beach, the plan was to cut off the coastline peninsula and deny the Germans the ability to reinforce Cherbourg. Okay, so let's dive in, and the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to start off in England, and they wanted to do an exercise, and that exercise was called Exercise Tiger. So I thought what we start off is we'll start off here in the Huey, which is Weymouth, and we'll get going, and we'll talk about things on the way. Okay, so this is Weymouth. This is one of the important ports used on D-Day. And we're going to fly, let's just fly over the town. It's a little peninsula that sticks out at the bottom of England. And this is Chesil Beach, you can see here. And you've got Purbeck, Portland Bill, and we've got a lot of Purbeck limestone quarries here. And we're going to fly out here now towards this area here, which is called Lyme Bay. So when we're talking, let me get the map. Right. There we go. Let me get the map up here. So when they decided that they needed to include the Coastline Peninsula as part of the invasion plan, they needed to keep the beach as close as possible to Omaha Beach so they could link up. And the problem with Utah Beach was that the Germans had basically opened up their lock gates and had flooded the area behind the beach. So what they wanted to do then is find an area on the south of England that was similar to that sort of scenario. And then if you think about where these ports are, you've got Weymouth, which we just left from, and most of the fleet that would take the troops into Utah would be coming from Plymouth, which is here. And so it made sense that if they could find something along this coastline between the two. And what they did was found this beach here, which is marked Custis 5, and this area here is called Slapton Sands. And it's got a shingle beach with a flooded lake behind, or area behind. And importantly, it was near to the ports of Weymouth and Plymouth. So this was the area of Slapton Sands was taken over in 1943, and it was designated a training ground. And they had to evacuate a bunch of villages there. And around about 3,000 local residents are evacuated from the area. Exercises, Tiger. I mean, it's a very long series of exercises. Basically, it starts in December 1943, and it was initially some exercises in order to practice embarkations and naval movements and get an idea of the scale of the operation. And but it culminated in a bunch of larger exercises around April and May 1944. And the main exercise that we're going to really be concentrating on was one that happened between 22nd of April and the 30th of April 1944. So the exercise, this exercise that happened at the end of April would have involved 30,000 troops reenacting a mock landing. It would include live firing exercise. Eisenhower insisted that live ammunition was used so that the troops would get used to the sounds of live ammunition, and they would be using these LSTs, these nine large tank landing ships during the exercise. Protection of the actual exercise area was conducted by 4 Royal Navy destroyers, supported by 3 motor torpedo boats and 2 motor gunboats, and they're mainly concerned with the threat from Cherbourg. Cherbourg had a flotilla of E-boats. They were like fast torpedo boats based at Cherbourg, and so the Royal Navy sent across these torpedo boats to put a net around Cherbourg to try to warn the exercise if any of these guys got out. So initially the exercise began with just a marshalling and embarkation drills. The ships would be leaving Plymouth or Weymouth, and they would basically simulate crossing the channel. So if you think about Plymouth, where it is. Where we are now, we're approaching this waypoint. If you imagine this, then where Slapton Sands is could be the base of the Cotterdam Peninsula, then these guys could come in from this point here, head south as if they're going down the Cotterdam Peninsula and then into the beach itself. This is simulating as if they're coming across from this area, which is it was called Piccadilly Circus. That was to the an area designated to the south of the Isle of Wight. So this is where they wanted to do. They want to get to this sort of area here. It's in this area is called Lyme Bay, and then they could head south. And now you can imagine that the land on the right-hand side is basically the Cotterdam Peninsula with the Utah Beach on the right. So mainly embarkation drills from the 22nd to the 25th, and then on the evening of the 26th they start to practice the actual invasion. So the first wave assault troops would get into the transports and set off and simulate crossing the channel, and they would go across Lyme Bay in order to arrive at Slapton Sands on the first light of the 27th of April. Let me just change the scroll. Let's get another one up whilst flying. So let's head south as if we were with the fleet. So the story of Exercise Tiger, history is, dictated that this has a tragic story. Basically, there's two major incidents that occur during this exercise, and the first one was basically a friendly fire incident. Eisenhower had insisted that live ammunition was used so that the troops would get used to the sights, sounds, smells, feel of a naval bombardment. And H-hour for this operation was set at 7:30, and what would happen is that Task Force U, they were the support elements for the operation, would commence a bombardment prior to the landing, about 15 minutes prior to the landing. What it was designed to do is that as these LSTs were turning west to head into the beach, so from the position custom 4, you can see on this map here, they'd have the task force behind them, and they'd be firing over their heads, so that they will get used to the sound of friendly fire coming over the top. Problem was, it was it's an exercise. Things started to go wrong. Some of the landing ships were delayed, and so what happened was that the American admiral who was in charge, who was Admiral Don Moon, he decides that because of the delay, then he will push back H hour by 60 minutes. So H hour now becomes 8:30 in the morning. But because of miscommunication, there wasn't standardized net. Some of the landing craft that had already embarked didn't get the message, and so they would go in on their original time. But of course, the naval bombardment had now been pushed back an hour. So what basically happens is, rather than them firing over their heads as they hit the beach, the naval bombardment is hitting the beach at the same time as the LSTs hit the beach. And this causes well, we're not sure how many casualties. It could be anything up to 450 casualties come from this naval bombardment alone. So the operation or the exercise has not started well, and things don't get any better. This was on the 27th of April, and on so in the evening of the 27th, 28th, I think the Germans either got a wind of it, they might even be able to hear the naval bombardment. They managed to sneak out of Cherbourg 9 German E-boats, and they departed just past midnight on the morning of the 28th. They managed to evade the Royal Navy motor torpedo boats and get into the English Channel. So they get across into this area where we are now, maybe slightly further over that way to the southeast. They managed to get into this area, and 6 of the E-boats, they were commanded by Bernard Klug. He makes out in the darkness. Remember, so it's at sort of 1:30. He makes out the silhouettes of 8 ships, and he divides his 6 E-boats into 3, and they go off on an attack. Attack these boats. They send up a red flare. This is also notifies the other 3 E-boats, who was commanded by Freier von Merbach. He can see these red flares and join in the attack. Two of the E-boats during these maneuvers collide with each other, damage themselves, and decide to exit and go back. And they producing smoke as well to recover their retreat. So the 9 are now down to 7 of these German E-boats. And so they pushed through their attack on these boats. They're a little bit confused about the LSTs. They think they might be merchantmen. They're not sure. But they attack these this convoy. The convoy itself, it should have been protected. Only one of the ships that was supposed to be protecting it was there, and that was HMS Azalea, which is a corvette. And it wasn't leading the convoy in a zigzag formation. It was just leading it in a straight line. The other ship, which was supposed to be with the convoy, was HMS Scimitar, but that had received damage earlier when it had collided with an LST. So you can see the dangers involved in operating at night time for these guys. It also turned out that the LSTs, which were the Americans, didn't have British operating radio frequencies, and so the LSTs that were being attacked couldn't radio their protection. And the ship that was supposed to replace HMS Scimitar was HMS Saladin, and that hadn't arrived and caught up with the convoy at that point. So we're just flying along here. This is Devon. So as for the LSTs, there were so one of them was LST 289. This was set fire, but managed to make it back to shore, and it in the process it lost 13 US Navy personnel. LST 507 was torpedoed and sunk, and with a loss of 202 US Army and US Navy personnel. And LST 511 was damaged, and this was damaged because it got fired upon by LST 496, which was intending to fire on the E-boats, but the E-boat went between them, and 18 US Army and Navy personnel were injured in that exchange. And then LST 531 sank. This was one that was filled with Army and Navy personnel. Sank very quickly, sank within 6 minutes, and 424 men were lost. And the remaining LSTs managed to drive off the E-boat attack. So in all, there was 749 servicemen were killed. There was 551 from the Army and 198 from the Navy. So combining those casualties with the casualties of the friendly fire, possible friendly fire casualties, we're not sure. We could be looking at over 1,000 men died just in exercising for Operation Neptune and the landing at Utah. So these casualties are comparable to basically Omaha Beach in scale. Many of the people who died as well were drowned, obviously, but they all died from hypothermia. But the ones that drowned was quite a sad thing, because they hadn't been instructed or didn't know how to put on their life belt correctly. And what happened was they had a lot of equipment on, and they're trying to get this life belt on, and many of them put the life belt around their waist. And what happened was when they went into the water, they basically turned turtle. The weight was on the upper body, so they just flipped over, and then they couldn't right themselves correctly. Okay, so here we come. This is let's just do a low-level pass first into this beach. So we can see Slapton Sands here is on our right. So the LSDs would have come in, attacking this beach here. Obviously, when we go to Utah, you'll see that we don't have this height of land. So the first friendly fire, it was mainly on the second wave coming in, got caught up in the artillery fire. But what this beach provided for the planners was the fact that they couldn't use this lake to get off the beach, so they had to use certain causeways to come off. So it simulated, as you can see here, there's a narrow stretch of road there coming off. So it simulated the impact of having probably to maneuver along a beach and find a causeway to get off. And so this is Slapton Sands here. One of the, I suppose, looking on the bright side of this exercise is that the Allies learnt a lot from it. They realised that these slow-moving LSTs were very susceptible to the German E-boats, and so they wanted to prioritise the sinking of these E-boats if they could prior to D-Day, whilst they were in a harbour. And so they argued with Admiral Ramsay the need to step up the bombardment of Cherbourg in the days preceding the actual invasion. And Vice Admiral Kirk is the guy who pushed for this, saying that it was a priority that these things had to be destroyed in the harbour before it got an opportunity to attack. The other Eisenhower was particularly upset because the convoy wasn't using proper evasion technique, and that had exacerbated the problem and allowed the U-boats to get in amongst them. The other issue was that there was believed to be at least 10 officers in those LSTs that were bigot level clearance. Now we spoke about bigot when we were talking about Major John Howard and at Pegasus Bridge, and these were the people who had basically got knowledge of the D-Day plans, and they got bigot clearance. 10 of these people were missing, and so Eisenhower was seriously considering at this point cancelling D-Day until they had confirmation that all 10 of these officers had been confirmed dead. And it turns out that all 10 are recovered at some point. These 10 officers were from the 1st Engineer Special Brigade, and they had specialist knowledge and knew where the Utah and Omaha beach landings were going to be. And they were also had knowledge of the Rangers' attack on the Point de Hoc. Though you could argue that, you know, the Germans just had to sort of see this landscape that they're coming into to make their own quite quick judgment as to where they were likely to land, and so you could probably also argue that the Germans were just basically incompetent at this point. It is believed that, you see, at the time that the E-boats were actually nosing around in the wreckage, looking for any information they could. The shore battery at Salcombe Harbour, which is up, which gives us also a bit of a clue as to where these guys were. Salcombe is in this area, I believe, up here. But they were ordered not to fire on these E-boats because it will give away their position. So the other consequences of this exercise was that the radio frequencies were standardized between the Americans and the British. Better life jacket training was issued for the landing troops, and plans were also put in place for a series of small craft to be used to round up survivors in the water on D-Day. This exercise was, and the death toll from it was kept quiet. Lots of people were sworn to secrecy, and the news of it only were not released until way after D-Day in about August 1944. and there were hints that there was quite a few casualties. At the moment, down on the beach, you can see a Sherman, DD tank, and that was brought up from the bay, and it was made into a memorial. Okay, so let's. That is Slapton Sands. So let's head over now. Let's have a little break. I will grab a glass of water, and we will come back and we'll talk about Utah Beach itself.